On December 26, 1996, the small city of Boulder, Colorado, was rocked by a tragic and chilling event, the unsolved murder of 6-year-old JonBenét Ramsey. JonBenét, a beauty pageant contestant, was found murdered in the basement of her family's home, and her death would go on to captivate the nation and spark one of the most intense and controversial investigations in modern American history. The case remains unsolved to this day, with new theories, clues, and suspects emerging over the years. JonBenét's parents, John and Patsy Ramsey, reported her missing the morning after Christmas when they found a ransom note in the house demanding $118,000 for her release. However, when the police arrived and began their investigation, they quickly realized that the situation was far from a typical kidnapping case. JonBenét's body was discovered in the family's basement, hidden beneath a blanket and duct tape, and the ransom note was quickly deemed suspicious. The initial reports indicated that there were inconsistencies in the story told by JonBenét's parents, and the investigation soon took a controversial turn. At the heart of the case was the ransom note itself, which was unusually long and detailed, making many experts skeptical that it had been written by someone intending to abduct a child. The note demanded the exact amount of money that John Ramsey had received as a bonus earlier that year. Was this an attempt to frame John? Was it written by someone who knew the family intimately? These questions would form the basis of the investigation, as suspicion began to turn toward the Ramsey family. The first big break in the case came when JonBenét's body was discovered. She had been strangled, and there were signs of blunt force trauma to her head, indicating that she had been struck with something hard, likely a flashlight. The method of murder was chilling, but what was even more disturbing was that there was no sign of forced entry into the house. The ransom note was also puzzling. It suggested a degree of familiarity with the family, but there was no evidence that anyone had entered the house except for the Ramseys themselves. This raised a terrifying possibility. Could the killer have been someone who knew JonBenét or her family? As the investigation unfolded, the Ramsey family came under intense scrutiny. The police initially focused on the parents, John and Patsy, as well as JonBenét's brother, Burke, who was 9 years old at the time of the murder. Some speculated that the family might have been involved in a cover-up, while others suggested that JonBenét's death could have been the result of an accident that had spiraled out of control. Over the years, various theories emerged, some of which cast doubt on the Ramsey family's innocence. But despite the numerous questions, no arrests were made in the immediate aftermath of the murder. 4 years, the case stagnated, with no new leads or breakthroughs. Investigators examined every possible angle, but the evidence remained elusive. The media frenzy surrounding the case only intensified, and the Ramsey family became the target of public suspicion and criticism. Was JonBenét's death a tragic accident, or was it something far darker? The question of who killed JonBenét Ramsey would continue to torment the nation, leaving the family and the police without any clear answers. As the years passed, new developments emerged in the case. In 2008, DNA evidence that had been collected from the crime scene was re-examined, and it was revealed that the DNA did not match any member of the Ramsey family. This new evidence suggested that someone else may have been responsible for the murder, but it did not provide enough information to identify the killer. The discovery of this evidence reinvigorated interest in the case, and it raised new questions about the role of the Ramsey family in the murder. Could the DNA evidence point to a stranger, someone completely outside the family? Or was there something more to the case that had been overlooked in the early days of the investigation? The re-examination of the evidence brought fresh hope that the mystery of JonBenét's murder could finally be solved. However, the case remained as puzzling as ever, with no new breakthroughs and no clear suspects. Theories about the identity of the killer continued to surface. Some believed that JonBenét's death was the result of an intruder who had broken into the house, while others suggested that it might have been an accident, perhaps caused by a family member. The idea of a family tragedy seemed to resonate with some, as the family dynamics had been strained in the years leading up to JonBenét's murder. Could a moment of anger or frustration have led to her death? Or was there a deeper, more sinister explanation behind the crime? As the case progressed, the investigation was plagued by missteps and mishandlings. Early on, the police allowed family members and friends to enter the crime scene, potentially contaminating crucial evidence. This lack of professionalism made it harder to follow leads and led to a frustrating lack of progress. The media's sensational coverage of the case also played a role in complicating the investigation, as false theories and rumors spread rapidly. Despite the attention, the case was still marked by confusion and inconsistencies, and the family continued to face both public scrutiny and media pressure. As the investigation into JonBenét's murder dragged on, the police department's handling of the case became increasingly controversial. Investigators faced mounting pressure from the public, the media, and the Ramsey family, who were desperate for answers. The case was marred by a series of missteps that would complicate the investigation for years to come. One of the most notable issues was the public and media's growing suspicion of the Ramsey family, especially JonBenét's mother, Patsy. The family's behavior, particularly their apparent lack of immediate emotional distress when JonBenét was first reported missing, raised suspicions among the public. Some questioned whether they were feigning innocence, while others argued that their demeanor was a natural reaction to the horrific trauma they had experienced. This suspicion created a toxic atmosphere around the investigation, with law enforcement and the public increasingly turning their attention toward the family. Despite this, there was still no hard evidence linking the Ramseys to the crime. As the investigation continued, new theories began to emerge. One of the most disturbing possibilities was that JonBenét's murder had been the result of a tragic accident. Some investigators suggested that JonBenét's death might have been caused by a botched attempt to cover up an accident, possibly involving her brother, Burke Ramsey. According to this theory, an altercation between Burke and JonBenét may have escalated into something much more tragic. However, this theory remained highly speculative, and there was no concrete evidence to support it. Burke Ramsey, who was 9 years old at the time of the murder, had been in the house the night of JonBenét's death. He had been questioned by police, but no evidence ever emerged to suggest that he had played any role in the murder. The theory of an accidental death gone wrong remained just that, a theory, and one that would continue to stir controversy for years. Despite the lack of evidence linking the family to the crime, many people in the public and media continued to focus their attention on the Ramseys. The investigation was increasingly driven by public opinion rather than solid facts. The media frenzy surrounding the case only worsened, with the press reporting on every new lead, every new theory, and every twist and turn in the investigation. Some media outlets even sensationalized the case, publishing unverified claims and creating a narrative that further tarnished the Ramsey family's reputation. As time went on, the case became more and more entrenched in the realm of speculation. Theories about the identity of the killer began to evolve, with many people suggesting that JonBenét's death was connected to a number of other unsolved cases. Some speculated that JonBenét had been killed by a serial killer who had operated in the area at the time, while others pointed to the possibility that the crime was part of a larger pattern of child murders in the United States. This theory was given more weight after the discovery of similar killings in other parts of the country, which seemed to mirror JonBenét's case in some ways. Could the Black Dahlia case, for example, be linked to JonBenét's murder? Were there other cases of similar brutality that might be connected to the same perpetrator? Investigators began to explore this possibility further, and there were a number of publicized investigations into other child murders that could have been linked to JonBenét's case. However, despite these efforts, no clear connections were made, and the theory of a serial killer quickly lost traction. It became increasingly clear that the killer responsible for JonBenét's death was likely someone who had been familiar with the Ramsey family and had been living in the Boulder area at the time of the murder. In 2008, after years of investigation, a new development provided a glimmer of hope in the case. DNA evidence, which had been collected from the crime scene but never thoroughly analyzed, was finally examined using more advanced forensic techniques. The results were groundbreaking. DNA collected from JonBenét's underwear and from other parts of the crime scene did not match any member of the Ramsey family. This ruling eliminated the possibility that a member of the Ramsey family was responsible for JonBenét's death, and it was seen as a significant breakthrough in the case. However, this discovery raised more questions than answers. The DNA did not match anyone in the Ramsey family, but it also didn't match anyone in the law enforcement databases. Could the DNA have belonged to a stranger who had broken into the house that night? Was the killer someone who had never been caught, or was the DNA a clue pointing to someone from the past? This new evidence prompted a renewed investigation into the case, but the question of who was responsible for JonBenét's murder still remained unanswered. The breakthrough in DNA analysis also reignited public interest in the case. The question of whether or not JonBenét's killer was a stranger continued to linger, as investigators tried to piece together any clues they could find. One theory that gained traction was that JonBenét's murder had been a crime of opportunity, with the killer seizing the chance to abduct and kill a child in a random act of violence. However, the fact that the killer had left behind a ransom note and had gone to great lengths to conceal the crime suggested that the motive was much more complex than a simple act of violence. As the investigation continued, new theories emerged about the identity of the killer. Some believed that JonBenét's death was connected to a pedophile ring operating in the Boulder area, while others suggested that the murder could have been the result of a botched kidnapping attempt. These theories, while intriguing, did not provide enough evidence to definitively solve the case. But they contributed to the ongoing mystery and heightened public interest in the case. The investigation into JonBenét's murder was also complicated by the fact that many of the original evidence and leads had been mishandled during the early stages of the case. The crime scene had been compromised by police officers and other investigators who had failed to follow proper procedures. The public's fascination with the case also led to speculation that the police may have been too eager to close the case, rushing to judgment and failing to fully investigate potential suspects. This lack of thorough investigation left many unanswered questions. As investigators continued to scrutinize every possible lead in the JonBenét Ramsey case, the investigation became a roller coaster of highs and lows. The breakthrough in DNA testing had brought renewed hope, but the lack of any clear suspects and the passage of time made solving the case seem increasingly unlikely. Theories continued to evolve, but with each passing year, the answers seemed farther out of reach. JonBenét's murder became more than just a crime, it became a symbol of the complexities of human nature, the shadows that can lurk behind closed doors, and the devastation left in the wake of unsolved crimes. One of the most disturbing theories to emerge over the years was that JonBenét's murder was somehow linked to the world of child beauty pageants. Elizabeth Short's case, which had been dubbed the Black Dahlia murder, had also involved a young girl who had been caught in the media spotlight. Some believed that JonBenét's tragic death was the result of a vicious attack rooted in the same kind of dark undercurrent that had plagued beauty pageants for years. Were there forces at play within the pageant world that had led to JonBenét's death? Was it possible that someone who had been involved in the world of pageants had taken a personal interest in her, leading to a fatal confrontation? The connection between JonBenét's murder and the world of child beauty pageants was explored by some, but there was no concrete evidence to support this theory. Despite the intense public fascination with JonBenét's involvement in beauty pageants, investigators found no definitive link between the pageant circuit and the crime. However, the idea that JonBenét's murder might have been the result of a personal vendetta or a twisted obsession with her beauty contest career persisted as one of the more haunting possibilities. Over the years, a number of individuals came under scrutiny as potential suspects in the case. One of the most significant figures was John Mark Carr, a man who came to the public's attention in 2006 after he made a startling confession. Carr, a school teacher with a history of mental health issues, claimed that he was responsible for JonBenét's death. His confession, however, was deeply problematic. Carr had been living in Thailand at the time of the confession and had little to no direct evidence linking him to the crime. The case against Carr fell apart after it was revealed that his DNA did not match the evidence collected from JonBenét's body. The confession was dismissed as a delusional attempt for attention, and Carr was eventually exonerated. While Carr's confession was quickly debunked, it highlighted the intense public interest in the case and the ongoing search for answers. The media frenzy surrounding the Ramsey family, particularly after Carr's false confession, had created a toxic environment around the investigation. The public's constant speculation and the pressure on law enforcement only served to complicate the case further. The question remained, who was responsible for the death of this young girl, and why had they gotten away with it for so long? In 2010, new developments in the case began to surface. After years of investigations and dead ends, a new forensic team re-examined the evidence in the case and began to focus on the possibility of an intruder. For years, the theory that the Ramsey family was somehow involved in the murder had overshadowed other possible leads. However, new evidence suggested that JonBenét's killer could have been a stranger who had somehow gained access to the house without leaving a trace. The idea that a person from outside the family had committed the crime was a chilling possibility, but it also opened up new avenues for investigation. The re-examination of the case also brought attention to the strange circumstances surrounding the ransom note left in the house. While many investigators had originally believed that the note was a crucial piece of evidence, it had become increasingly apparent that it might not have been connected to the actual crime. Some theorists suggested that the ransom note had been a diversion, an attempt by the killer to confuse investigators and misdirect them from the true nature of the crime. But this theory only raised more questions. If the ransom note was a red herring, why had it been written in the first place? Was it a calculated move by the killer, or was it the result of panic and confusion in the aftermath of the murder? Another significant theory that emerged was that JonBenét's death had been caused by a violent struggle that had spiraled out of control. Some investigators speculated that JonBenét had been sexually assaulted during the course of the murder, but this theory remained controversial. The evidence of sexual assault was inconclusive, and the lack of a clear motive made it difficult to determine what had actually transpired in the Ramsey household that night. Had the killer known JonBenét, or was the crime a random act of violence? Was there something in the family dynamic that had led to this horrific outcome? These questions remained unanswered, and the investigation continued to spiral in different directions. Despite the advances in forensic technology and the renewed efforts to investigate the case, the truth behind JonBenét Ramsey's murder remained elusive. Theories continued to emerge, but none of them provided a concrete answer to the most important question: who killed JonBenét Ramsey, and why? The case had become a symbol of the uncertainties that come with criminal investigations, of how even the most high-profile cases can remain unsolved for years. As of today, the case remains open, and the mystery of JonBenét's death continues to haunt her family and the nation. New clues and developments continue to surface, but the killer remains at large. With each passing year, the chances of solving the case seem to diminish, yet the hope that one day the truth will be uncovered keeps the investigation alive. JonBenét's murder may have taken place more than 2 decades ago, but her story is far from forgotten. The investigation into JonBenét Ramsey's murder remains one of the most haunting and perplexing cases in American history. Despite decades of investigation, countless theories, and new forensic advancements, the identity of JonBenét's killer remains a mystery. With every new lead, the case gains fresh attention, but the question still lingers: who killed JonBenét, and why? In 2016, the case saw a new wave of interest when the Boulder Police Department, in partnership with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, CBI, and the FBI, launched a fresh examination of the evidence. This was not the first time that DNA evidence had been revisited, but the new team was determined to utilize the latest forensic techniques in hopes of finding a breakthrough. The challenge lay in the fact that so much of the original evidence was contaminated or compromised in the early stages of the investigation, leaving investigators to sift through a tangled web of conflicting information. DNA testing, which had already exonerated the Ramsey family in 2008, was once again a focal point in the case. In 2016, investigators used a technique called forensic genealogy, which had been instrumental in solving the Golden State Killer case, to analyze DNA samples. This approach allowed law enforcement to build a family tree of potential suspects based on DNA samples that were found on JonBenét's clothing. While no definitive match was found, the use of this new method brought hope that the case could finally be solved. However, it also raised more questions, as DNA evidence alone could not conclusively point to the killer's identity. It became clear that solving the case would require not only the DNA match but also an understanding of the intricate and convoluted circumstances surrounding JonBenét's death. Despite the renewed interest in the case, no major developments have been made, and the investigation remains at a standstill. Theories continue to circulate, with some suggesting that JonBenét's killer could have been a local person with intimate knowledge of the family's home and routines, while others believe that the killer was a stranger who managed to evade detection. Theories about possible involvement by family members, particularly JonBenét's brother, Burke, have been reignited in the wake of new theories, documentaries, and books, but these ideas have been widely discredited due to the lack of evidence. The idea that the murder might have been an accident or part of an elaborate cover-up is still a possibility, though it is often met with skepticism. With so many theories and no concrete evidence, the question remains: who committed such a brutal and senseless crime? The emotional toll of the case on JonBenét's family has been immense. Patsy Ramsey, JonBenét's mother, died in 2006 after battling cancer, and John Ramsey has since remarried. Their lives were irrevocably changed by the murder of their daughter, and the years of public scrutiny, police suspicion, and media attention only compounded their suffering. As the case stagnated and the media frenzy continued, the Ramsey family became trapped in a nightmare of speculation, doubt, and false accusations. Despite being exonerated through DNA testing, the family's reputation was forever tainted by the suspicion that they were somehow involved in JonBenét's death. John Ramsey and his surviving family members have spoken publicly about the pain of having their names linked to their daughter's murder for so many years. The public's obsession with the case and the media's portrayal of the family made it impossible for them to find peace. Over the years, JonBenét's murder has become one of the most iconic unsolved cases in true crime history. Books, documentaries, and podcasts have explored every aspect of the case, offering new theories and presenting new potential suspects. Despite the wealth of information and the intense public interest, the murder remains unsolved. Some experts believe that the case will never be solved, given the lack of concrete evidence and the years of investigation that have led to so few answers. However, there are still many who believe that the truth is out there, waiting to be uncovered. As new forensic techniques continue to advance and new investigative tools become available, some investigators hold out hope that JonBenét's case will one day be solved. The hope that justice will be served keeps the case alive, and the mystery surrounding JonBenét's death continues to captivate the nation. But as the years pass, the chances of solving the case seem to diminish. The question that remains is not just about identifying the killer, but also about understanding what drove them to commit such a heinous crime. JonBenét's murder was not just a crime, it was a symbol of the dark undercurrent that runs through even the most idyllic communities. The Ramsey family's pain is shared by so many families who suffer from the devastation of losing a loved one to violence, especially when there are no answers. The emotional cost of a crime like JonBenét's murder is felt not just by the victim, but by everyone who is left behind, forever haunted by the unanswered questions. As the investigation continues, one thing is certain: JonBenét Ramsey's death will never be forgotten. The mystery surrounding her murder may never be solved, but her story continues to inspire people to search for answers. Her life, and the brutal circumstances of her death, have left an indelible mark on American history. The search for justice, though it may never be completed, is a testament to the strength of those who refuse to give up, even when the answers remain just out of reach. In the years since JonBenét's death, her legacy has taken on a new dimension. She is remembered not just as a child beauty queen whose life was tragically cut short, but as a symbol of the enduring mystery that exists in the world of true crime. Her case will forever be one of the most puzzling, heartbreaking, and compelling unsolved mysteries in the history of criminal investigations. And so, as the case remains open and the search for answers continues, JonBenét's story lives on. Her name is forever etched in the annals of unsolved mysteries, and her death, though shrouded in darkness, has inspired countless individuals to dig deeper, to ask more questions, and to never stop searching for the truth.